Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. I'm Becky Graby, Senior Director of Communications Strategy at Dynamic Signal. I'm really happy that you've joined us today. I'm super pumped about this session, a big part of which is because I've got my longtime friend and industry colleague, Ali Bunin, Global Head of Internal Communication at Russell Reynolds, with us as a featured guest today. So Ali and I met, oh gosh, many years ago, too many to mention, at a PRSA Employee Communications Section conference. And we went on to serve on that board together. Ali, you were working for a healthcare organization, large healthcare organization at the time, but you've since moved on to a wonderful position with Russell Reynolds Global Consultancy Firm. So tell us a little bit more about you and your role at Russell Reynolds before we get started.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. I lead global communications, internal communications for Russell Reynolds. We have about 1,400 employees all over the world in 46 offices, even though none of us are in our offices these days. And I manage the whole gamut of internal communications and crossover into colleague engagement as well, crisis communications, all of that. So really happy to be here and excited to share how we can get 2021 off to a roaring start.
Awesome. Well, speaking of getting started, let's do just that. Just a few housekeeping things as we get going. Ask questions at any time. We're going to leave some time at the end when we can, exchange back and forth with some of the things that you're most interested in learning once we've had a chance to go over the ideas and examples that we want to share. And you can do that via the Q&A button that if you hover over the bottom of your screen, you'll be able to find the Q&A box. And then you're also going to receive the recording later today. So don't worry about taking copious notes and this type of thing. Ali and I have agreed that everything we talk about today, we want to provide to you. So all the examples, all the templates, there's a guide to focus groups, lots of different things that we're going to incorporate in the conversation today. And all of those examples are coming to your mailbox along with a team of 12 to help you get this done. Not really, but that would be awesome. But no, you're going to be able to do this. After we talk today, you're going to realize that this is something that you can tackle, even though it's kind of a crazy time to be taking on anything that feels kind of big, right? But let's start this morning with an audience poll, just to give us an idea of when the last time was that you all conducted a comms audit. I mean, I know. Gosh, Ali, this has been a challenging time for everybody, but certainly those of us in communication have felt the impact. But I mean, what would you say to somebody, teams right now that are sitting behind this webinar going, I want to do this, but gosh, I'm already feeling so overwhelmed. I mean, how would you respond to something like that?
I would, yes, everyone is overwhelmed, but actually, I think given the tools we'll look at today, it doesn't take all that much to do it, and it is so worth your while, because in addition to presenting findings and figuring out what's working and not working, you can take some things off your plate because you'll have the data to do that. So
absolutely.
Something to definitely, I guess, everyone here today is looking to do a comms audit. So I would encourage you to ask questions and make sure that you make the time and the effort to do it as soon as possible.
Okay. All right, let's look at these results. Okay, most of us are like, I'm not really sure, or it's been a long time. Before you get discouraged about results like that or feeling that needs to be your honest answer, which I love that people are honest about this, I think it's really important just to give yourself a little credit. You're here today, you're wanting to know, how can I do this in a way that is not so cumbersome, but is going to give me the real insights and the real data that I need to make the recommendations that probably your team already has a hunch in there somewhere, but now you're going to have the data and the metrics and all the analysis that you need to move forward. So that's good. We'll just take it from that standpoint, right?
And I would just add that 2 years ago when I joined Russell Reynolds, I set out to do a listening tour and do a very deep audit. And guess what? I never finished that listening tour, nor did I finish the audit because I was trying to do too much. So today, what you're going to get is a really easy to use tool and a set of tools, but also, don't try to boil the ocean. It doesn't have to be an audit of everything. It doesn't have to be completely inclusive, but you'll get a sense for how you can use it and sort of customize it, and take it for what it's worth and how it's going to work for you.
Truly. I mean, don't even let the term audit terrify you. I mean,
Yeah.
this is just a close inventory and review of where you are, what's working and what's not. And hopefully it will be very revealing to you. So let's just jump in. Again, we're going to send you this deck, so you don't need to record the steps, but we're going to try to keep it within a reasonable things to follow. But interestingly enough, when Allie and I were talking about, one of the first things that we felt was most important had absolutely nothing to do with comms deliverables, but getting a really, really sharp look at what the business goals and challenges are, certainly for this coming year, but even for that first quarter, first 6 months, and this year in particular, are going to be really unique, right? And then also taking a fresh look, making sure you're gathering all the evidence that you need. That includes things like corporate values. So, but Allie, to do this, it's not just enough to look at the current websites and kind of pick and find things on your own, right? You believe it's critically important to actually go and talk with your leaders and meet with them directly. Good luck with that, right? It's hard to get their time. Why is it worth really pressing for that?
Absolutely. You have to be able to have the business input into anything you're planning for the year, so that it's not just auditing your diagnostics of engagement and clicks and open rates and all those things, which are important and they have a place. But really, it's spending time with the leaders or influencers in your organization to understand what they're aiming to do differently and what great looks like to them. So I always say, though, one thing you don't want to do is ask them what they want, because most people don't know what they want, particularly with communications. They want everything and they want it now, as we all know. So when you go and have those discussions, and how I like to do it is I get a 30-minute meeting with, if it's a very senior leader, I offer to do it before or after business hours, and obviously working around the globe, that does happen quite a bit where, this is an evening discussion so that it's morning their time, but make it convenient and conducive to their schedule. Spend just 5 minutes talking about your role, your function, and ultimately how you can help them. But you just want to understand from their perspective what's working, what's maybe not working as well, and then understand from them what great looks like and ultimately what outcomes they're looking for, both in their business goals and objectives, but also with respect to colleague engagement. And then you have those insights to tailor what you're working on, so it feels very personal to those leaders.
Love that.
They don't want to know what you're working on. They don't care what you're working on. They care about what they're working on. So you have to tailor.
Well, and I think by having those conversations, you learn things that don't necessarily appear in, the chairman's letter about these are the things we're striving for. You also get a sense of what those challenges are that can't really be written down, but that are on their minds, or things that might seem more logistical. I mean, we're hearing a lot about how are the vaccines and our approach to vaccines. How is that going to impact the way we do business in this first in 2021? So getting a real sense of what's inside their head that they can't really put out in a public space or in written form, but you understand what they're challenged with, that's so valuable, right? In just getting that good mindset. So I agree with you. I mean, finding out what those business goals, take it outside of the comms world. Nobody's in business to have the best comms program in the world. They're just not. They're in business to do the things that their business is established to do. So the more as communication professionals we can hitch our wagon and our needs and our goals in terms of the ways in which we want to communicate to those goals, the more successful we're going to be across the enterprise. So couldn't agree with you more on that.
And just on a tactical note, for those notes that you're going to send to the leaders to get time on their calendar, I would make it about them and how you can help. And that seems to work out really well.
Good point. Good point. Well, the next important tenet of an audit obviously has to define your audiences. And clearly, we are in an age now where we cannot just simply say, well, it's everybody. It's everyone in the organization, all employees. Just lumping them into that one category doesn't do them justice. We would never do that in a marketing sense, right? All our customers, we're just going to send the same messaging and the same ads and this kind of thing too. We really need to be able to tailor the message so that it's more effective and doesn't get watered down. But why? I mean, give us some of the reasons of why setting as specific as parameters around those audiences possible allows you and the efforts that your team is making to be more effective.
Absolutely. I mean, this is an old model, but we use the know, believe, and do model at Russell Reynolds for our communications and engagement approach. What do you need people to know? What do you need them to believe? And what do you need them to do? You simply cannot batch everybody together and have those same outcomes. So defining audiences is absolutely one of the first things that has to be done. And it's not just lumping people together by work group, location, or title. We get really, really specific with regards to how the person is being impacted by the communication. And that takes a lot of effort. And it's not something that's done overnight, because you really have to learn who your people are and how they're experiencing the organization. But that effort is well worth it, particularly when you're looking at change management communication. You just can't blanket the message. And I could give so many examples of this where, I say the question, who needs to know and what do they need to do? And a business leader will say, it's funny, we have different objectives across the spectrum of this program. And that is why you have to know the audience, and you have to be very specific with your message, or else people look at it as junk mail and they delete it because it didn't apply to them. It's no different than customer marketing, frankly.
Yeah, totally. Even if the outcomes you want to apply to everyone, the messages that you might give to your leadership team or people managers are going to be much different than those you might give to frontline workers or to a group of interns or whatever the case might be. So I think as much as we can tailor the message, how it's told, and what those action items need to be as a result, we'll have a really, really positive outcome. But we've also talked about how, in addition to reaching out to your top leader, your CEO in many cases, it's important to gather info from organizational partners. So think about some of the major divisions that live within your organization. It might be HR, it might be IT, sales have specific things that they're striving to do in the coming year. You want to be their partner in getting those important messages across. So, Allie, in your experience, I mean, again, give us some ideas of things that in 2021, this crazy year, what are some of the questions that you might be asking HR leaders about what their unique challenges are and how you might help them?
Sure. I mean, I think all organizations right now are faced with the challenge of keeping the culture connected remotely. And, when we talk with our human capital team, we talk about, we use the know, believe, and do, but we gather specific information around different things that are coming up. We talk about their time frame, and we talk about how we can sort of influence leadership decision making through advanced communications, for example. So we're gathering info from them, very specific, detailed information, so that we can help shape what the communications look like. And that's also where the audit comes in, right? Because they want to say, well, what channels do you have available? And what is your timeline? And how can we get on the communications calendar? And we say, let's take a step back. By when do you need employees to take an action? By when do you need to inform leadership so they can influence the people locally? And so we really get very involved in that. We help shape, we mold it together. This is not, nobody wants to be an order taker. So you're not just kind of like ordering up communications, but at the same time, you have to counsel them. They're just not thinking usually. I mean, it's not that everyone is smart. It's more about thinking about the different pieces that go into your communication strategy that I think leaders are very much in their own world and they're thinking about hitting their deadlines. And so you really have to help them sort of see a more holistic picture. So that's the type of information I'm out to get. And it's much more of a sharing session, molding and shaping session. If you're going to your leaders to get their communication objectives and timelines, you've missed the boat. They've already set that. And it's very difficult to influence and counsel them at that stage.
Absolutely. And I think about some of the foundational, the underlying concepts that are running through some of these different aspects of the organization, and diversity and inclusion being such a big one right now in most organizations. And a lot of times that does fall into the HR purview to lead that charge. Not that everyone in the organization doesn't have responsibility and ownership of a piece of that. But, just getting to the heart of that, what does that mean for you, HR leader? How do you want to activate that in 2021? How can we help be part of that effort? And make it less about the communication channels, and we can write an article for you, or we can do a video for you. More about what do we want to do? How do we want to level this up? And being able to have that strategic a conversation. We do have a question here, Allie, that relates to something you were just talking about. It asks, do you ask these know, believe, do questions in your discussions, these discussions with leaders?
I do. What I say, typically what I do is I have a conversation first. So I don't bombard them with a ton of questions, but when I'm digesting our conversation, I put together, it's now sort of, it's a staple for me. It's a one-page communication briefing. And on the briefing, I have know, believe, and do articulated, one bullet under each. You would be shocked to hear, or maybe you wouldn't be, that this is probably the most influential piece on that whole briefing, because when you see a know, believe, and do articulated, it becomes very easy to stack communications against that, and people love it. So I absolutely use it. I don't ask them. I might say, what is the desired outcome here, which is what do you need? Usually that's a do, it's an action. And after I digest everything, then I think about the know and believe, and then I always share it back with them. I don't move forward on things typically until we have agreement on the briefing. So they've seen it, they've read it, they've either edited it, given input, but yeah, that's, listen, it doesn't happen like that every time. We have a ton of issues and you can't always write the one pager, but for things like you just said, Becky, diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts are big right now. Human capital has a lot on their plate. So we do briefings for different initiatives and it really helps. And it is based around the know, believe, and do.
Smart. But even, in your conversations with IT, to be able to go in, and they don't want to be order takers either. So I think to have a more strategic level conversation with them is always appreciated. I know when I was working at SAS, we would have, these types of conversations ongoing, actually, to say, what are some of the big changes in our platform technology and our tech stack that you already have planned for the coming year? What does our mobile accessibility look like? What is the ratio of company issued devices, let's say? Just helping them understand, what are your biggest cybersecurity challenges? How can we help you with that? I think they really appreciate being a partner, so that then when you want to go back after you've done an audit like this, you might identify some tech gaps in being able to reach all of your employees, that you want IT's partnership in solving that equation. And then you've presented yourself as a strategic partner in the business. You understand what they're up against. And I think, it's a lot easier to ask for help. But at any rate, this type of conversation is something Allie and I both believe you should be having across the organization, with each of those major division heads. So at this point, you've got a pretty good handle now on what the major initiatives, major efforts of each area of the organization is pulling together. And now it's time for you and your team to pull together a matrix of the current comms channels and the audiences that those serve. Allie, you've done this time and time again with the organizations that you work with. Walk us through, kind of tell us a little bit about why this is important and how to why it's important to put it all in one place and get a bigger view of the
Sure.
full picture.
So having a snapshot or an inventory, if you will, of all the channels, the audiences, and what the engagement looks like. Number one is just makes it convenient for you as you get asked all the time, hey, I want a video, hey, I want a page on the intranet, and
Yeah.
you'll have this go-to where you can pop up and say, these are our channels. I'd like to talk through your goals, and we can think through what to use. But I would say the real why behind this is that you, again, can take things off your plate, see gaps, think about where you have areas to merge and combine. I'm going to show an example of that a little bit later, where having this audit helped us make some really smart decisions and influence people, so that instead of it's not just take Allie's word for it, this is going to work. It's data, and it doesn't have to be the
Absolutely.
most scientific data, but it is data. And so executives, as we all know, respond very well to data in their decision making. And so you have to have this at the ready. This isn't something that your boss asks you for and you start struggling to piece things together quickly. You should always have it. It's a fluid document. We're going to show you. I use Excel, so it's absolutely nothing fancy, but it's something that when you maintain it, you'll wonder how you ever lived without it.
Yeah, and I think that's really come to light this year. I know working with Dynamic Signal and some of our customers to do some of this work, it's been eye-opening to list out all the various channels. And I'm not kidding. In many of these organizations, communication teams are overseeing, more than 20 channels, from digital
Absolutely.
signage to text messaging to mobile apps to internet, email, team huddles, all hands, all these different
That's
things
us.
in different ways, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, very few organizations are just using one or two of these. It's a combined integrated effort, or we're striving to make it more integrated. But it is enlightening, number one, for your own team. I'll say that, to see all this in one place and to kind of sit back and say, wow, we're overseeing a lot. So those days when you're feeling overwhelmed, that could be why. But also then to matrix those with your audiences. So while you might have 20 channels, there might only be one or two that apply to frontline workers, for instance. And it's eye-opening. And I think not just for your own team, but to be able to go into leaders to say, this is an area where I think we need to put some attention. And certainly in 2020, because of the way that we all had to work differently, a lot of the organizations we work with were noticing that and realizing it was harder to reach those frontline employees with 100% confidence, to know that, okay, it's not just the cascade method that I'm relying on. As a leader of this organization, I want to be able to know I'm communicating directly with everyone in my organization. So doing this exercise is not as time consuming as you might think, but it can be very, very revealing. And that combined with an inventory of your content. So it's not just enough to say, yes, we're doing video, we're doing leadership video. But when you put down the various series and you begin to look at how effective those are, some of the video series are like, not resonating with people. They're exiting out like halfway through the video because it's just not interesting enough. So being able to identify where we're putting, resources and time and energy and that kind of thing. I mean, again, Allie, you've done this, so many times. I know video was a big piece of what you wanted to bring in a fuller fashion to Russell Reynolds. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. And I would first say that everyone now is moving to video. And the challenge with video is that they're too long, they're too produced, or they're the reverse, right? They're these quick iPhone videos that are probably still too long. So without any data behind that, you're going to be hard pressed to convince a leader or just an influencer in the organization that you shouldn't be doing video. So what we've been looking at is how do you measure and look at how many videos you have? If you have too many videos, that's a turn off too, right? You need to diversify the channel mix. But in addition to that, we can see that any video over 2 minutes, if it's not a recording of a meeting, if it's a video geared to do something, it will not be watched. We also know that videos without captions are not going to get watched. So you sort of look to LinkedIn as a best practice where their videos, they have captions built in. You should be able to watch it from your device very easily. You should be able to, access it easily, not behind a firewall would be ideal. So there's best practices. And again, putting down on paper how many videos you've done, what the view rates are, what the time spent viewing is. You can go back to a leader next time and say, listen, and I'll show you on the tool, we actually have a column for effort required. When we work with our CFO, who's an amazing person, but he doesn't like to be on video, but we thought, let's communicate those financial results on video. It was a disaster. And the data shows that people don't want to watch a 15-minute video about financial performance. Plus they want to ask questions, which they can't do via taped video. Plus, you're reading a script. So I digress, but it's about knowing, again, it's knowing content types, and it's being able to go back to him, which I did, and say, guess what? You're off the hook. You don't have to do those videos anymore. He was thrilled. I didn't tell him how many people watched it, but he's great. How else do we present financial results? And I say, we're going to have a forum on our global town halls. You're going to get 6 minutes every town hall religiously, and we are going to present financial results, which was something completely new for the firm, to have that level of transparency, and people love it. And so again, it's just, those data points are important to decisions.
I completely agree. And, if you go in and you're trying to put your opinion up against the, CEO of a company, you're not going to win that one, right? But when you come in armed with data that individual's employees have proven out, it's hard to look away. We got yays in the chat from Yay Mobile First Approach to Video. I think it's so important to make sure that we have a good solid way to do that. That's consumer grade in the experience. Not that they have to log in through 17 different, gates and keys to get to that video, but it's just really easy to pick it up and look at it while they're standing in line somewhere, or
absolutely. That's where the
going about their regular day, right?
The other thing I want to mention here, Becky, is you don't go in with your audit and your data and say no. You go in with, we're not going to do this. Instead, I propose we do this, and here's why. Don't say no. We're not saying that if your CEO wants to do a video, you say no. We're suggesting that you use the findings to really make informed decisions. I just wanted to be clear about that.
No, I agree with you. And I think there's some nuances there. That's a whole different workshop. But I think, to be able to go in to say, here's what you're doing really, really well. We need more of that. People like your approachable tone. That was new for you in 2020. We really want to keep doing that. Here's what we need to do. Based on the data, people are dropping off halfway through. Let's shorten your videos. So right. You get to your close, you get to the thing that you're asking people to do before they leave. So yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you have to go in with something that, I really like, and employees really like. The data is telling us that employees really appreciate and resonate with this. Let's do more of that. And yeah. Knowing where you stand with all of these allows you to let some things go that are easier to let go when they're not being as effective as you had hoped. And we just did a screenshot of Allie's Excel tool that she uses. This is, trust me, she took me through the whole thing. It's many, many pages long, but we just kind of pulled a screenshot here. And why don't you just walk us through what you track when you're pulling things together and why?
Right. And I did remove some of the details here, obviously, for this discussion. But the beauty of this is it could be as extensive as you want it. It could be tabs. It could be pages, however you want to do it. How our team likes to do it is we go by platform. So we look at email newsletter. We look at our intranet. We're launching a mobile app very soon, so we'll have that to add to the mix. And then we get into assets. We have screensavers, pop-up surveys, survey monkeys. We go into every asset that we have a hand in, and we measure it, we monitor it, and then we make changes. We also have, I want to draw your attention to the effort level. This is really important because when you look at the effort level and you stack it next to the engagement rates, you're going to feel either really good about those engagement rates or really badly. And so I want to draw your attention to what I've highlighted here. We're going to talk about this example in just a little bit, but When you have something that is in the red, I have it, that's a high effort level, that's a drain, or that's something that takes up a lot of time, whether you're a small team like we are, or you're a large team, you want to see the engagement married to the effort. And if you're not, that's a really great place to start. You can dig in to do a diagnostic on that. You can go and then get feedback on that specific communication. Make a few phone calls, make a few Zooms. Becky's going to talk a little bit about that. And then you add your notes. Why is it being perceived this way? Why are people not clicking on it? So you don't have to do that for everything. That would be very time consuming. I like to cherry pick based on effort. So where it's pulling a lot from my team, I want to make sure it's good. And if it isn't, I want to understand why. And then I can make some informed recommendations to the leaders that are backed by data. And then we make a decision to veer away or try something different. So this is what the tool looks like. It is so simple, which maybe, people were expecting something super fancy. I mean, it's Excel. I'm happy to answer questions about it. It's not a one size fits all. You can make it anything you want. And I know some people, yes, it's inputs and outputs. It is. So thank you, Karen. Really.
Well, and you can call it simple, Allie, but there's a lot of meaty information here. And the fact that it's Excel will allow you to filter it. So let's say for your team, I want to see all the resource heavy projects that we're doing on an ongoing basis. Is that reasonable for the amount of staff I have? I either need to scale back, or I need to request more headcount, or I'm going to burn my people out. Or is there a way that I can take this resource heavy thing that really resonates with employees and do it in a different way? I know for us, when I was working at SAS, employee feature stories were always got amazing readership, but it also, comments, the good kudos back and forth in the comments to those stories were wonderful, but they were time consuming to write in true narrative, like, newspaper feature style.
Absolutely.
We switched over to a Q&A, kind of like we had 10 questions. Yeah. So there's another way to do and still highlight individuals and tell people's stories, but we let employees tell those stories in a Q&A style. So it cut down on the amount of copy editing and that kind of thing. So this type of tool will allow you to kind of hone in on, wow, I didn't realize I was asking my team to do so much in that heavy category. We got to switch something around.
It's funny because at SAS, we're having an opposite issue. Like, our colleagues are so focused on surviving in this kind of environment that we're in, adapting. The culture's, really important to maintain, and individual employee stories are on hold right now, because we view that, first of all, it is incredibly time consuming because it's very personal to the individual. There's a lot of back and forth, a lot of editing. Nobody wants to read these deep individual stories, which, that doesn't mean that we're not doing community building, but right now we've pivoted from doing those feature stories. We don't have a great channel right now to push them out. So I've guided my team on halting those efforts because they're significant. We've had to work, 24/7 during COVID. So, we've said evergreen stories like that and individual stories, we're going to hold. We're going to focus on teams who are thriving, market growth, virtual camaraderie and things. So we're covering those. And I have to tell you, it's shifting with the business. It's shifting with the environment that we're all probably doing together.
Right.
Getting a bunch of questions about the effort level and how we measure.
Yeah. Can you take those now, since we're on this, on this screenshot?
So effort level to me is subjective. Someone asked, is it subjective? I don't have a formula for it, but I will tell you this. We got a new chief marketing communication officer this year, who rightfully so stepped in, I think it was June, and that was just a really incredibly challenging time. And she said to me, what are you spending your time on? And where's the most effort you're putting in? And I didn't have any kind of tracking mechanism to report back. And I formerly was in consulting briefly, and I used to track my time in 15-minute increments. So I am not a fan of time tracking, even though it's important. I'm just scared of it now. So when she asked me what me and the team was working on, it was a very fair question. We built a time tracking tool We also were able to, we did it by client, by project, by initiative, you name it, really detailed, and it took a lot of time. And I'm happy to share if anyone's interested in that, because we built the formulas and did all that, maybe it would be useful to you. From the time tracking device that we looked at, we saw clients that we were spending an inordinate amount of time on for a lower return. And the best part of that tool was we saw there was formulaic communications, like new hire announcements, departure announcements, bio editing, colleague profile stories. Those are things that we looked at and said, we can outsource that to a freelance writer because they're formulaic, and it doesn't take institutional knowledge to do that. That was the biggest win, I would say, is that we could show how many hours a month we were spending on those things. And so we were able to get resources and support.
Smart.
That was the best thing that came out of that, as far as I'm concerned. But to answer the question more specifically, effort level for us included how many rounds of revisions, how high touch we needed to be with the leader to get a communication done. You probably have leaders in your company who they just need more. They need more handholding. They need more walkthroughs. They need deeper dives around communications plans, and they like to edit. And when you have those things, or if you're gathering sources from multiple places, the example we're going to go through, we're going to talk about that a little bit. That's a big effort. That's not a one and done. You can see I have a green effort on the in the know email. Company news, we have a news announcement. Everyone is kind of waiting for it. It's an email that we send out, and it's sort of, I hate to say it, but it's a bit of a check the box exercise. It's green. It doesn't take a lot of time to put together. Some of these other newsletters take longer to put together. So you'll know, you'll probably know off the top of your head, like who those people are and who requires more effort. And it doesn't have to be scientific. Just color code it so you can be aware, unless someone asks you, why did you color code it red? And then be able to speak to it.
Yeah, we had a little bit of it was similar when we did this. We did a sliding scale of a 1 to 5. So, 5 was something that took a lot of time and many interviews and, unique graphics or a video shoot that went along with the piece. So yeah, I think there are different ways that you can kind of set up your own key, so to speak, and just follow as closely as possible. But you're right, it's going to be somewhat subjective. Another quick question around this, and then I think we probably should move on so we get through everything. But what about those KPIs? Are those the comms teams, or do those relate to overall business goals?
That's a great question. It's funny because KPI here is probably not even the right label. These are more engagement diagnostics, which are, in some cases it's open rates, it's click-throughs, it could be average visits, views, time on site, those types of things. So these are, in fact, it's not even fair to call them KPIs, because business KPIs are generally associated with action. You're not going to have someone say, I hope at least 1,000 people watch my video. Your expectation as a leader is that everybody is going to watch it. So these are more diagnostics. I do think, though, that when you do your communications planning, of course, you're going to have KPIs there, which are both business and communications based. I saw a question come in, Becky. How many people are on my team? I just thought it's a good question. So I have 2 manager roles on my team, and then I have a full-time contractor who focuses on change management communications. And then we have some outsourced freelance support. I am hiring for a new manager role. I'll put a little plug in there, but
get that in there. I know too, there are a lot of organizations that are looking to students, right now to fill in some of those the freelance type things that you were talking about. So it's another way that you can get budget for, maybe more of a part-time kind of role to do those more formulaic types of communications. And then we also have one more question about these deliverables. Did they come from meetings with those divisional and business leaders, or are these things that are in this matrix? Are those something else? But my guess is this would be a combination of things from previous, because these are these are things you're currently doing. So those would have come from previous years' conversations, right? So you're kind of analyzing everything you're doing right now, and there are considerations that get worked in there too. We really want to do some new things as well.
Yes, and like I said
Yeah.
in the beginning, this is fluid. So like it's about time we'll be sitting down to reevaluate some of this just in the COVID era, but also based on some changes we're making. I mentioned we're rolling out a mobile app, so we're going to be hyper focused on different aspects of that and how successful it is. But some of this I inherited. I will say that over the years at Russell Reynolds, almost 2 years that I've been here anyway, it was a free for all in terms of email. So someone's asking in the queue, which is a great question. Do you send one email between each department? Do you bundle them together? We started bundling together corporate news and bundling together, for example, I don't know if you can see, it says Powering You, which is our corporate center, IS, marketing, legal, how we're powering you, the business, to go to market and things like that. But some I inherited. And some we've taken off the list. Like I mentioned, like those financial updates are gone, which is great. But it's a
to your point, because you're new, you don't want to come in and just start slicing and dicing and removing things that, in your opinion, probably aren't as effective. It's better to get a little bit of a feel and get the data behind your recommendations, which is kind of what the whole audit process is about. But Allie, do you want to give the example of the newsletter that you were talking about?
Yeah, so one of the challenges that we inherited was that we're a very market focused and results driven culture. And so to drive our people to act on things, we created a lot of newsletters. So, and newsletter is a great way to bundle information, right? And whatever you want to call them, emails, newsletters, bulletins, briefings, whatever. So there were tons of these newsletter documents. They were formatted, in different ways, and they're all intended to do the same thing. Once we looked at them, which was drive market activity. So we have all these different industries that we serve, of course, and we do tons of different things at Russell Reynolds. And so everyone wanted their own newsletter. So I'm focused on, for example, CEO searches, or I'm focused on healthcare, or I'm focused on financial services. So it started out that they would create a newsletter just for their own industry partners, colleagues inside the firm. But then they said, but everybody should know what we're working on. We want everybody to get excited about financial services.
How many times have we heard that?
So there's no offense at all to the business, because they have the right idea. They want to communicate, and they took it upon themselves to create newsletters. So I inherited a ton of these newsletters. Taking away newsletters is a very painful exercise. Number one, it feels very personal to them. And number two, without the data, they just feel like you're picking on them. So we did, through our audit, we really carefully watched all of these newsletters. And I'm talking, there were 5 global ones, and then there were lots of different vertical newsletters, which actually we ended up keeping. I just won't get involved with them, which is fine, and they're on their own, and they are not sent globally. They're more of a targeted distribution. But the point of this example is we used the audit. We saw all of these different market type of newsletters going out, and we spent time with all of these leaders, and we showed that. And we also had the backing, of course, from the CEO, who was just tired of it, because people were complaining. People felt like there was no coordination. I didn't feel like I was in a good position. I wasn't controlling it. It just felt like it was an oversight on my part. There was a lot of drama around it. We took the click rates. We took the open rates. We monitored it over a 3 to 5 month period of time. And we came up with a solution. So we brought them all together, and we amplified engagement. We created one go-to-market newsletter, and everyone knows when it's coming out. They can expect it. And the beauty of this newsletter is we have criteria, and there were things that were being communicated before at random that actually are no longer in there based on the fact that nobody clicked on it. The go-to-market newsletter actually came from COVID environment, because people were desperate to focus and they just didn't know where to focus. And so we couched this new go-to-market newsletter under the vein of, we know you have a lot going on personally and professionally. We want to help you focus, go to market. Here's the top things you should be doing right now. And then we link all the resources, and we created a microsite that links to the newsletter. So they always have the past issues. They always can go and get what they need. It's just been a tremendous response. People are so grateful that we decluttered their inbox to some extent. It just feels much better. And then of course you can see the data is consistent. You can see people, they enjoy it, they click on it, they use it. We can see it connects with the microsites. We can see what tools they're downloading on a consistent basis. So it's just been terrific. Without auditing and without spending time on that, we wouldn't have been able to do it. We just would have made everybody angry and feeling like we took their stuff away. And now we just, it's a great position to be in now.
Love it. Love it. I mean, it's got to be a really good feeling to be able to say, look, you're doing less work across the board.
It's a lot of work.
Just smarter
work. It's red because it is a ton of work. It's a lot of gathering.
But instead of doing whatever you said, 12 or 15 newsletters, you're really being smart about doing one that makes sense. So I think, sometimes we do get caught up in our deliverables and counting our outcome, not our outcomes, but our outputs, rather than how effective is this? And so an audit of this type will help you step back, put the data in there to really justify decision-making around that. So that's an awesome example. And it really, it gets to the heart of what this is all about, which is once you've collected, and it is a lot, it's a lot to collect. And in most cases, this is a team effort. This is not, unless you're a one-person team, this is not a one-person effort. As much as possible, you want to get your whole team involved, whether you divide that like Allie did by platform or channel, or you divide it by audience, or however you divide it, and collecting that information to get it all together so that everyone can take the holistic view. It gets down to brass tacks where you actually have to take a look and start to analyze what you see before you. And I know, Allie, you use that start, stop, continue approach, which is just a kind of a simplistic way of viewing a really complex process or exercise of putting things into those three big piles. So talk to us about how you decide what goes in which pile.
Yeah, it's a good question. There's no real formula around that. I know it sounds like we're throwing out a lot of models, but I'll give you another really quick example. Most companies, right, are closing the year. So financially, December, with the holidays, with everything, trying to get all the bills paid and all that, like December is not a great time to roll something out, right? And then similarly, January is when everybody's like, hey, we're back and let's focus on the new year. And many companies are finalizing compensation and closing their books officially and doing all that. So we are able to, and we have stopped a lot of things from going out in those months. And even, I will say, we just did a really, really nicely done year-end CEO communication. And we intended it to go out on the 16th because in our European offices, they sort of shut down for holiday. Mm-hmm. We couldn't get it done. And we sent it out on the 21st. And I could not believe the dip in engagement we got. And it was something we spent a ton of time and effort on. It was a bit of a miss on our part, frankly, to not really hustle or stick to the deadline we had set out to. We just didn't anticipate. So, Christmas week, like not a good time. And it's sometimes hard to meet those deadlines. But again, you can use this to really help the leaders understand what we're not going to do. And we're also, I know in September, something happens in our firm and the details aren't important, but our CEO said nothing can launch in September. And so that's what we're going to do this year. We're going to stick to that. So you can build your communications calendar and framework around this data as well. So
I think that's why that notes section is so important in your tool, because you don't want it to appear next year as you're analyzing things that, oh, well, we're not going to do a holiday message from the CEO because that didn't work very well. I think to be able to note, that it needs to go out earlier to meet our global audience participation ability. So those are the kinds of things that the nuances are also important. And to that point, once you do have all this data and analysis in front of you, sometimes I think you do need more sentiment analysis. You want more insight and direct feedback from employees. So that can come in the form of surveys and pulse surveys. I know you're a big fan of the pulse surveys. Tell me
Yes.
why you use these just consistently throughout the year.
So we just love the pop-up poll surveys. So for those who may not be familiar, it's really a poll. You can make it a couple of questions, but we get unbelievably high response from them. So when we send out a Survey Monkey via email, probably because we send too many emails generally, people just ignore them, or they think, oh, it's an email, I'll file it and I'll get to it later, and then they never do it. A pop-up survey, it pops right up on your phone or your computer. It takes, we'll say give 30 seconds to answer these. We get such rich data and commentary from it. It's easy for them to do. And we always throw in a good communications question. We also always ask, what support do they need now? And that's new from COVID environment. So I'm telling you, during the beginning of COVID pandemic, we were doing it once a week, and we established this culture of caring and really importantly, asking people, are they okay? Do they need anything? And how can we do a better job communicating with you? And I mean, out of our 14 or 1,500 employees, we always had 12 to 1,300 respond within 24 hours.
That's amazing.
It is.
That's amazing.
I mean, you never get that kind of response from a Survey Monkey.
Because it's easy and it's convenient. Yep. And, it's just one question. But I think, to your point earlier about, really actually doing something with that information, knowing in advance what your plan is once you have the data from that little pop-up survey. One of the things I love about the Dynamic Signal platform is the ability to retarget how, the groups of people who answered in a certain way. So if somebody said, I'm having a rough time, you can carve out that group easily and re-communicate with them to find out, what do you need? How can we help? Or just to provide, ways for other people within the organization to reach out. So
exactly,
having a good plan for what you want to do with that information, even if part of it is just to supplement the findings of your audit, to be able to make your recommendations and share with leaders the sentiment around, or the ideas about what people, are thinking about that they'd like to see from on a communication front that isn't being analyzed because you're not doing it. Absolutely. So that's been really helpful as well. And in the same way, the idea of conducting some simple focus groups. And we do have a do-it-yourself focus group guide, which we'll be glad to share with you, that provides kind of the basic structure of doing this in small fashion, even virtually, or just there are like 20, 25 great focus group questions to kind of get underneath the hood a little bit and find out what's on the minds of employees. But Allie, I know you're even doing this individually right now during COVID. I love that. Tell me what that is gleaning for you.
So really briefly, we feel that because everyone is so underwater generally speaking, and people are struggling in their personal lives for a variety of reasons. So when I pick up the phone to a colleague or a leader, you connecting individually is really important. And I think it's really, how can I help? Or, how can we commiserate? Frankly, lately it's more about commiserating, and everybody's in lockdown and all of that. So it's relationship building, which is really important, as we all know. And as Becky, you and I were talking about earlier, that if you are seeing some really low engagement amongst a particular group, it's great to get a couple of them on a Zoom. And it's a safe space, and there's just some informal things you can ask, and from those conversations you can pivot and shift so quickly that they'll feel it. They'll actually see a tangible result, which people love.
I have never done these without really learning something that was an aha kind of thing. Like, I would have never thought that, and it's just when you get into a real conversation. So let's remember too that the communicator's role is as much to listen as it is to push, right? To push content.
Yeah.
And then the grand finale, being able to pull all the data together, take a look at channels and audiences and content types, what's working well, what's not working well, what employees are telling us, all of that to present those findings to leaders, and not just present data, but propose the recommendations where we see,
I just did
there's
this.
some,
Yeah.
yeah, there, tell
Look
us
at
about
this.
that.
Well, just quickly, I mean, it's a 2-slide deck. I do one slide and I actually build the slide, and the left, it says what is working really well with a thumbs up. And then I show what is not working well. And it's a mix of things that are working well and not working well. It's so simple. You do not have to, put loads of time into these slides, but senior leaders want the highlights, right? Here's what's going really well, and here's what's not going well. And then the next slide is, here's the 3 things we're going to do. I only do 3. And then of course I say behind this is a deeper detailed plan, and I'm not going to bore you with the logistics, but no.
Yeah, just executive summary style.
Exactly. So I do those 2 slides. I do a 1-page executive summary, which is very similar to the communications briefing we talked about earlier. And people can't focus on the 96 things you're going to do, because you're going to do them anyway, but they just want to know the highlights and the quick recommendation. So I found that with senior leadership, that's the best way to go. The other thing, my big tip that I want to leave you with, which is so important, is when we were trying to get rid of some emails and we were trying to reduce overload, I left the leadership with this. If you want to send an email and you can't answer what you want them to know, believe, or do, we're not going to send it. And they were like, huh, that makes sense. Like, if there's nothing for you to do and the email is just for you to like check a box and tell people something that you want them to know, but there's nothing for them to do, for example, or if you want them to believe that your strategy is on point, but there's nothing really for them to know, there's nothing newsworthy, we're not sending an email, because every email we send disrupts their ability to go to market and talk to clients. So that's been helpful too.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, I think to keep it as simple as possible and doable, but know that you've got the evidence you need to back up how you arrived at these top 3 recommendations. But I mean, again, in talking with these leaders, and I think it's really critical that you circle back not just with the CEO or top leader, but to be able to go back to those divisional heads that helped you identify what's most critical for them, and let them know what you're working on in order to give them 100% confidence that you can help them. You can be a partner to them in securing the results that they're looking for.
Becky, we have a question from Eric that I do want to answer, because I think it's really, do you send most of your emails from a single email address like communications at Russell Reynolds, or do you send them from different people? Different leaders. Give people a voice. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is so top of mind for people that we are definitely diversifying the voices that we're using, the senders of the communication, and we're starting to put more junior level people, frankly, on the communication. We're doing a lot of joint messages because people actually want diverse voices, and they want different levels of the organization speaking to them. So we've been doing a lot more of that, and it's been going over well.
I think that's definitely a trend that I'm seeing too, Allie. I mean, you really want to humanize the whole approach, right? They give them the voice that they need in leading, and really it makes, I think, that person more approachable.
For sure.
When they're speaking from their own vantage point, their own ideas, their own personality comes through. So that's why I think video has just taken off. I know at Dynamic Signal, it's almost tripled the number of leadership videos that have been shared. And I think it's because we're not in person-to-person settings where they can let that personality shine, that compassion that they have right now, so forth. So videos become an important aspect of that. But we do want to move into a few Q&As. We've got just a few minutes here to answer those. Gosh, we're right at time here. But I think we've answered a few of them along the way.
Some people really want that time tracker.
Yeah, that seems to be a popular one. So we'll make sure that
I'm not going to
snag that from Allie too.
Painful. That is a and it's painful, but it's a really great tool.
Yeah. I'll just take one, Allie, that hasn't been answered, and that's the one about how often do you recommend doing a comms survey or comms audit?
I like to, so a comms audit, different than the survey, I would say do your audit, keep it fluid, and look at it every 3 months, or, depending on, you'll use it. So you're going to be opening that document up. So will your team.
I love that it's a working document in
Yeah.
your mind and not just a one-time, we did that, set it on the shelf, let's look at it next year. It's a working document. Love
Completely.
that.
It's a fluid live document. And then with the communication survey, I'm leery to do communication surveys because, as I said when we started, people generally don't know what they want. They can tell you how they think from their perspective the communications are going, but most of the time, asking people what they need and if we're meeting them where they are is a better way to gauge. So I tack on those questions to other surveys.
Okay.
But
great advice.
Yeah, I mean, we just did our global town hall, and we do a survey after every town hall. And so that is more about communications. Did you feel informed? Did you feel it was relevant? And to that survey, I always tack on, what do you need right now? What support can we give? So I think, surveys are important to meet people where they are, and it's not just about what you want to get out of it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we are a couple minutes over, so thank you all for hanging in there. Thank you, Dynamic Signal family and friends, and those of you who have joined to hear Allie's ideas and expertise. Allie, thank you. You mean the world to me, and your ideas and your examples and all of that just are so meaningful for those of us that are trying to fight the good fight in terms of bringing everything we can to our organizations right now. So hang in there, everyone, and take care. Bye.
Thank you.